I don't know if you remember, but around 2 years ago, we started a podcast series. So the wonderful Kevin and Warren started the Recovery Position podcast, and it was received really well. It supported so many people, and we've decided to delve back into that space again. So we are excited to do this as a launch today. We have decided to do it a little bit different. We have an exceptional team at Arc Fitness. They all have different skills, different qualities, and they're really good at different things. So we've gone for a team-based approach, and we've called it more than a podcast, because it is that. It's going to be more than a recovery podcast, more than an addiction podcast, but it's going to be centered and focused with lived experience. And if we've heard anything today, we've understand the importance of that lived experience. But I'm going to let somebody introduce it a lot better than what I'm going to do. So can I have a warm round of applause for our very own peer support worker, Roddy, for the first time to the stage. Woohoo!
Hello, everyone. So, fun story. Gaz asked me if I'd be interested in hosting a podcast, but he neglected to mention that there'd be this many people watching. So, thank you, Gaz. No pressure. So, I just want to start off by thanking each and every one of you for being here. And welcome you to this panel session. We're super excited to be launching the brand new Arc Fitness, More Than a Podcast. Before we get into that, I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Henry. You might have seen me in a video. I've been hanging around ARC for about 2 years. And I came to ARC as a client, as a person in recovery, to complete the flagship 6-week program. When my turn came up to complete the program, I was in the very early stages of recovery. I had got sober through a residential rehabilitation centre named White Oaks, which I can't speak highly enough about. And my life at that time was very, very simple. I was working, I was eating, I was sleeping, I was cold water dipping, and I was participating in 12-step recovery groups. Now, whilst that was the happiest and the most stable that I had ever been, what was missing was the ability to exist, to socialise and to thrive in the big bad world outside the comfort of the recovery world. So not only was ARC great crack, but the support from the community and from the team gave me the space to learn through living. They were always there to share in my triumphs and support me through the mistakes. The ARC program, the ARC team, the ARC community put me back in the driving seat of my own life. They gave me the confidence to trust myself again. I was a regular attendee at the weekly check-in, and for anyone that doesn't know, that's like a support group for like-minded people to talk about whatever's going on in life. And about a year in, Gaz had approached me and asked if I wanted to join the ARC team and become a facilitator for those check-in sessions. Now, albeit a bit nervous, I agreed. And it's turned out to be one of the better decisions I've made. Not only is it incredibly rewarding to help people, but it's been a good catalyst for personal growth. As a member of the ARC team, I'm exposed to many opportunities for personal and professional development. Most recently, Gaz pulled me up to the office again and asked me, do you want to host a podcast, or do you want to stand on stage in the Millennium Forum and just pretend you know what you're doing? So here we are. But that brings me to why we're here. It's the ARC Fitness, More Than a Podcast. And it's a fresh and empathetic perspective on what it takes to overcome addiction and to build a brighter future. Each episode will feature candid conversations from a variety of people with a variety of backgrounds, as well as practical tips and insights on topics ranging from managing triggers and cravings to building a support network and healthy habits. So whether you're in recovery, you're thinking about recovery, or you're supporting someone in recovery, we invite you to join us and listen on the conversations from individuals who have lived experience, experts in the field, as we share stories, insights and tips on what it takes to break the cycle of addiction and find a path to healing and growth. The podcast, as Gaz mentioned, is going to be hosted by the entire ARC team. It's a collection of professionals and experts, people with lived experience, all of whom will be sharing the hosting duties. And today I'm going to introduce you to 4 of those very special people. So I'm going to politely ask that you hold any round of applause until we get them all on the stage, as we first of all bring on Mags. Come on, you out, Mags. Hi, you good? Mags is our manager. Have a wee seat there. She does everything. Next up, we have Warren, who's a gold standard in peer support, as we know. He's a huge personality, and he's a personal mentor for me. Next, we have Jay. Jay is a spin class hero, albeit questionable taste in music. And he's recently become, in the middle there, Jay, he's recently become our full-time family support worker. And last but not least, our running therapist, Kieran, who's probably going to come on the stage at a pace matched only by Usain Bolt.
Thank you.
Yeah, right. So you give me a round of applause, please, for our guest. Thank you.
Settle in.
Breathe. We good?
Yes.
Comfy? So I'm going to start off with our Mags here. As I mentioned, Mags is the manager. I describe her as the oil in the ERC machine. So we're all these different wee cogs building a bigger sort of end product. And Mags, without the oil in between the cogs, we'd all seize up. And that's what Mags do. She's been referred to as the glue that holds ERC together. So I'm going to ask you now a big question. I'm going to ask you, what is it that you do at ERC?
I don't know how to answer that, but everything. So personally, I take the mindfulness sessions that we run at ARC. I do one-to-one recovery coaching as well as the fitness classes. But I suppose predominantly, as you said, I look after the operational side of ARC, how we deliver what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So the scheduling, timetabling, all that kind of stuff. And as well as that, getting to look after our lovely team as well and just oversee what we're doing when we're doing it and everything.
Brilliant. And I've seen that facilitating the check-ins. I was a bit nervous to start because I felt like it was all on me, but I just have that point of contact yourself, and I say, Mags, X, Y, and Z is going on, and within a day or two, Mags just comes back to me and she's like, yep, X is sorted, Y is sorted, and Z is going to get sorted tomorrow. Like, happy days. Brilliant, Mags. So this year's theme, Mags, is more than that. And what does that mean to you?
I suppose for me, it's more than that was such an important campaign for us. It's really getting to see the person behind the substance or the issue that they're dealing with at the time. Getting to see that personality, getting them to see it for themselves, that they're more than that and they're more than the struggle. And we're in such a brilliant position that we get to see on a daily basis, the humour that people have. We've had people within our community going out and completing triathlons and everything else. So people are more than that struggle, and I think that's really important that they see that for themselves as well.
And that's just one you mentioned. It's one of my favourite parts of being on the ARC team. You see people coming in, and I was the same, riddled with like anxiety, not really able to voice, how you're feeling, not even understanding how you're feeling. And over the course of a relatively short period of time, you see somebody come out of the shell, and you start to see who they are underneath it, and it's magic. It is magic. If you could bottle it, we'd be rich.
We definitely would. I think it's that empowering thing, isn't it? Seeing people taking the gold, Gary says, the gold that's in there, seeing beyond and seeing the person for themselves.
100%. Now, what about the podcast, Mags? What's your involvement going to be?
So mine is going to be around the mindfulness that we do. Mindfulness, what's the benefits in recovery, how we use it, and also just, I suppose, you said from the oil point of view, making sure everybody has their sessions done and supporting if need be. And I have, with Gary, worked on just the initial setup and everything as well in the introduction for it.
Brilliant. The mindfulness is such a big part of the programme. My own experience, when I was doing the 6-week programme, I didn't really realise how anxious I was until I went to a mindfulness class and you removed all the other distractions, and I was just left with my own head and my own thoughts, my own feelings, and it wasn't necessarily a pleasant experience. And I remember then many months later going to a mindfulness class, and like the difference was really apparent to me. It was like a measure of the progress that I was making, because I was just under. I fell asleep. It's great.
We always talk when everybody's in the class. When they come in initially, everybody's trying to hide the yawns. And so explaining in the class, that's a really good sign. It means you're beginning to relax, and when you can see that, especially if you're falling asleep, that's a brilliant sign.
Good sign. Brilliant, Max. Brilliant. So thank you for answering my questions. We're going to move on to Warren now. Our Warren, he's a peer support pro. Many of you probably know him. He's no stranger to the stage, and he's a veteran podcast personality. Same question, Warren. What do you do at ARC?
Everything but push-ups and sit-ups.
Fair enough.
I think you do some of them as well.
Yeah. I don't like running either, but what I would do is the check-ins primarily, which you'd be no stranger to either. What that is just, it's less a counselling session and more conversation. We invite people to come in and be honest, open, vulnerable. and we provide the space for that to be facilitated. It's a big, powerful part of ARC, I think. You ask somebody how they're doing, chances are they say okay, and they're not really okay.
Grand.
But we would get that conversation to open up, and then they actually tell you how they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's magic in itself. Like, outside that, I would do the Academy in the background, which is our online learning tool. Kind of control that, moderate that. That's been cultivated and built from the ground up by our fearless leader, Gaz. So, it knows what it's talking about, even if we don't, like.
Yeah.
So, not about the head of it.
Yeah, that's grand. And the check-in, as you know, I was a regular attendee at check-in before I started facilitating them. And you were, it was just maybe 2 or 3 of you doing it, so sort of regularly on your check-ins, and you just had such a way about you, and it was just so comfortable to talk. And as I mentioned before, it's magic when that room works, and people can just be vulnerable, and they're safe to be vulnerable. And like, as you say, it's not a counselling session. We're not there telling people how to live their lives. We're just giving them space, and it's been the biggest part of ARC for me, for sure. And obviously, you'll be bringing your own lived experience to the podcast. So, why is lived experience such an important element to have on the team and to have on this podcast?
I think relatability, which is definitely a word I had to practice backstage.
Yeah.
When I thought I was going to say
True
it.
story.
And authenticity, which was the second word I was practicing backstage.
Nailed it.
There's no way I'm going to say this word out loud. Like, I think we don't want to say know what we're talking about, because that might not be true in some cases. Like, but we have access to the knowledge to know that we're talking about what we're talking about. I think the biggest thing is to bring a wee bit of humour to it too. I think what we do here is a very serious topic and a very serious subject.
Yeah.
I think if we can cut through that darkness with a wee bit of light-hearted humour, all the better. I think. Like, I mean, people like to laugh.
And that's that is literally your go-to.
Yes,
That's your field of expertise. As
Yeah,
Gaz
yeah.
had mentioned, there's many inspirational quotes coming from John Wick and many other famous films.
I was going to say something from Toy Story 3 if I run out of things to
Yeah.
say, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Chances are it's going to have to work, like.
Yeah, but and I find that too. Like, there's many people helped me in my journey who didn't have lived experience, and I got so much help from them. I find, especially in the early stage, knowing that the person you're talking to has been through this, it allows you to put down some of them defense barriers that are going up. As I mentioned at the start, learning to trust myself again. Well, I was actually quite thrown an addiction, and I didn't want to be told what to do. So the first people that really broke that barrier down for me was people who had been through it, because I couldn't question it in my head, and that was my experience, a lived experience of people supporting me with lived experience. So I think it's a valuable thing, and on their team we do have so many other people doing so many other things, and it just comes together, sort of, what is it they say about creating a sum bigger than all the individual parts, So, but it's important. It's a part. Well, thank you, Warren. I'll give you a break.
You're
at
welcome,
that.
Henry. I like a wee tree here as well, too.
It's a nice wee tree. I enjoyed it. So we're going to chat to Jay now, folks. Thank you, Warren. On to Jay now. Just as the negative impact of addiction can ripple through a family, so does the positive impact of recovery. And I find, and sometimes we find that the family support bit can be a wee bit overlooked sometimes. So, Jay, why is it so important for the families of individuals dealing with addiction to receive support?
From what I found, the families suffer the same consequences of people in addiction.
Yeah.
There's lots of fear, and there's lots of guilt, shame, people try and hide it. And having a community of people that are going through the same thing, like we were saying, is really valuable. Letting people know that they're not on their own, and providing tools for them to navigate through it. Addiction affects everybody. One person's addiction can affect 5, 10 people.
Yeah.
So, ARC, bringing forward the family support and really trying to take it to the next level is really important, and we're doing great things.
Yeah. It's magic to watch. And for anyone that's not familiar, when we talk about family support at ARC, so we have these addiction programs running for people in addiction, and now parallel to that we have family support programs where people come in for a course of 6 weeks. But then after that, there's aftercare. It's a separate community created within ARC just of people who have completed the family support programs. And what Jay will do on a Wednesday is he'll invite whoever needs to come down for a chat, similar to what we do, we've explained with the check-in. He does the same thing for the people in family support. So even after completing that 6-week course, they can stay on as long as they want. They receive support and they talk. I think that's the big thing that helps us is talking,
And the check-ins are really good because you can come, and if you're having a tough time, you've got people there,
Yeah.
lived experience who can help you. But also if it's going well and you can come and share that experience, and somebody might need that little bit of hope that day.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to share both the positive and negative side
Yeah.
of addiction and recovery.
Yeah, 100%. So as I mentioned, as our newly appointed full-time family support worker, how are you feeling about being part of this podcast? What sort of stuff are you going to be covering?
I'm excited. I really like the way Gaz has opened it up for the whole team
Yeah.
to host and be guests. We've got such a unique team.
Yeah.
They all have their own gifts, and maybe not everybody gets to see that all the time, so that's really good that that's going to be available. We will be covering similar things that we cover to in the program. We'll be covering communication,
Yeah.
information on addiction, enabling and boundaries, which people are quite eager to learn about,
Yeah.
because usually by the time people get to us, the enabling has already taken place and the boundaries have already dissipated.
Yeah.
So we just teach people how to put them back in place, and that involves some self-care that we do with MAGS. And when someone's in addiction, you can kind of forget about yourself.
Yeah.
And it's really important that bringing the attention back to you not only helps you, it also helps the person get into recovery.
Yeah.
Because with the enabling process, they can sometimes feel not empowered to do it themselves. So that will be what we'll be covering.
Brilliant.
I'll be doing that with Sarah.
Yeah, brilliant. And as you mentioned, it could be very tough work because you have that positive side where the family member, the family loved one is doing so well in recovery, and that's coming on the bleeding on the family, but then you also have to pick up the pieces sometimes when it's not going so well in recovery.
Absolutely.
100%. Well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to go on to Kieran, last but not least. You all right, Kieran?
I'm fine, thank you, Henry.
Good job. Thought last year I looked over.
Last but not least.
So this is a man that takes the whole, like last year's theme was motion, changes emotion, and Kieran takes this to a whole new level. He's our running therapist. We're going to chat about that in a second. But before, tell me briefly about you and how did you become a part of ARC?
I suppose this is my more than that moment. I'm Kieran, I'm 25, I wish. I'm Kieran, I'm 52, I'm a husband, father, grandfather, runner, manager, coach, counsellor. And I'm in recovery coming up on 16 years.
Well done, Kieran. Give that a round of applause.
Thanks. And it's because of some of them things I mentioned is why I'm still in recovery and successfully on a different path. Family, of course, I had that motivation and that support. But I found running. I was lost for the first couple of years in my recovery. I didn't fit in, couldn't laugh, couldn't connect. And then I started to run, and I felt physically well, mentally better. I was connecting with people, I was challenging myself. So now today I combine that love of running with my lived experience, and I counsel via running therapy, which I do now for ARC. I was delighted to get on board. I would have known Gary from, I think, about 13 or 14 years. Myself and Gary rocked up. We bumped into each other, and probably the seed was probably sown at that stage. We ran with a local club, Foyle Valley. Gary was training for 3 marathons in a very short period of time, something silly like that. I was just glad to be at the sessions. But I think we both realised then that's where we needed to be. We fitted in lovely, and it supported our recovery. And that movement and challenge, I think probably has us where we are today, both in my own career and where Gary's brought ARC. Gary then kind of left the club. I think he went more into the CrossFit, that side of training. I continued plodding along, plodding the roads, doing marathons, and I bumped into him at a park run. I think it was around about probably 4 or 5 years ago. And Gary excitedly shared his vision of what he planned to do with ARC Fitness, and I was excitedly sharing my model of therapy through running therapy. And then it was shortly after that that Gary invited me to join the team, which I was delighted to. So I take the groups during the program. I'll take the groups out twice, and I'll also do one-to-one running therapy.
I remember the day when I was in the program where I was told on Thursday, I think it was, you'll be with Kieran doing some running therapy.
Yeah, it scares everybody. Everybody.
And I hate running. I wouldn't run for a bus. You know, I just hate running. Always. Well, I didn't know I hated it because I'd never done it. You know, turns out I still hate running. But I attended the 2 sessions with yourself, and then somebody came up with this bright idea where we'll do a couch to 5K. And after those 2 sessions with you, and I mean, I was dying, like, but I found myself just blurting out this stuff I didn't even realise I was thinking. And it was an amazing experience, you know. So Kieran was the reason I went back to the second running session, not running. And then I wanted more time with Kieran, so I went and done a couch to 5K, you know. Last time I ever ran, last time I ever will run. But the counselling side of it was so worth, you know, the pain and the anguish. So that's sort of how I've seen running therapy helping me. How have you seen running therapy helping people?
Well, I suppose what is running therapy? Running therapy is the link between movement and your traditional talk therapy. It kind of replaces the static atmosphere of a counselling room and brings you into the rich outdoor environment where change, choice, possibilities and opportunities are. I believe in life, if you're stuck, you should move. Yeah. And I suppose running in itself supports a lot of functions, you know, in physical and mental health. You know, physically it supports weight loss. It can, you know, keep cardiac, diabetes and cancer issues at bay for another while. Mentally, you know, you're going to get more sleep, you have more clarity of thought, you make better decisions. Aerobic exercise, I think, is proven to be a great antidepressant anyway. When you run, them feel-good endorphins come in, you get that little high. But it also gives you challenge. It gives you challenge, it gives you connection, and it gives you engagement, which I think are key for people in recovery, for any kind of recovery, whether that be addiction or whether that be through depression or anxiety, PTSD, ADHD, anything. So that's what I think running gives you. My own sessions, I have treated all of the above, and I've seen great change. At the start, I suppose people come and they may be a bit wary of what this looks like. The first couple of sessions may entail people maybe running away from their issues. And then as they get as a true exploration and through slower runs, walks, and I introduce runs in silence, progression runs, breathing techniques, walk runs. There's all different depending on what the presenting issue is. But during the middle of therapy, they learn to run with their issues, which is a really important phase of therapy. And then towards the end, the closing sessions, they're running towards new opportunities, possibilities, where they've got choice. And that's what I believe running has given me, and it gives other people. I believe running's freedom.
Yeah, magic. Well, thank you, Kieran, so much. I don't know about the rest. Do you think me and Warren's first podcast is going to be getting through Christmas without going crackers? I think we're excited about that. We're excited about maybe try to keep the war stories out a bit because it could be a long podcast, but I'm excited about that. I'm not sure if the rest of these have been given know your podcast yet. No, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to start to wrap up the session. So the news is now is that whilst we've been sitting on the stage, podcast has officially gone live. Round of applause, please. Thank you. So get straight on to Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, you'll find the Arc Fitness More Than a Podcast. Episode 1's up. Episode 1's Mags and Gas. I've had a sneaky peek. It's definitely worth listening to. So please do get on, save the episode, follow the podcast, listen to it and share it, please. And at the end of each month, we'll be launching a brand new episode. Keep an eye, if you follow the podcast, you'll see it, or you can keep an eye on our socials as well. So before we close the session, I just want to acknowledge that maybe people in the audience here that are thinking about recovery, maybe sober curious is a term that's being thrown about these days. Maybe you're in early recovery, or maybe you're supporting someone in recovery, or maybe long-term recovery. So to finish off, I'd just like to offer you people these gentle words of encouragement from Mary Ann Radmacher. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I'll try again tomorrow. And with that, folks, I'd like to thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention. You've been a great audience. I'll hand you back over to you guys.
Give them a bigger round of applause than that. We take a bow.